So welcome everyone to this first Values-Based Education Values Meet. I'm very pleased to have so many people joining us. I know we've got people joining us right the way across the globe, right the way from some in Brazil through to the Philippines that we know about, Australia, and I guess there's quite a lot of other places. And the purpose of this conversation is to provide support and to show some togetherness in some really tough times. So my name is Nigel Cohen. I work at Values-Based Education in the background. I'm really delighted to have the founder of Values-Based Education, Neil Hawkes, his wife, Jane Hawkes, who's a trustee of IVET, that's the charity arm of VbE, and she's a psychotherapist. And we have the CEO of Values-Based Education, Bridget Knight, and just a special thanks to Sue Webb, who's the executive director of VbE, who just does this unbelievable amount of work. So I just wanted to acknowledge that now. So if I may, I'm now going to pass over to Bridget, who's going to start this conversation going. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel, and hello everybody. It's wonderful to see everybody here today. So Nigel's just introduced me, but if you didn't catch it, I'm Bridget Knight and I'm the CEO of Values-Based Education. And I'd like to welcome each and every one of you here this morning. We're just thrilled that you're with us on the very first of these values-based education webinars. But as Nigel said, the purpose of these is very much for us to create an event that's going to leave you feeling supported and uplifted and inspired. So I'd like you to consider yourselves enveloped this morning in a very warm and virtual values-based embrace. Okay, so this is the 40-minute session that we've got this morning, and it's going to comprise a personal reflection time led to us by Jane, and then we've got a message that's a really exciting message from our founder, Neil Hawkes, who's going to talk to us about some exciting new thinking he's been developing. And I know that you're going to find this a great stimulus for your future work. Also going to just launch a new values-based award that we're very pleased to be initiating this morning. So a little more about that later. And plus, as Nigel has already said, about your discussions and questions too. Okay, now I'm a serving head teacher, so right now I'm profoundly aware of the exceptional relevance of your work as values-based leaders in all the forms that it's taking. I know that you are acting as a values-based lighthouse for your communities and for your families, for your own families, for your school families, for your pupils and your staff as well. And I really resonate with you because I know that you will be dealing with a really complex cross-current of issues and emotions. So much has come at us all, hasn't it, in just you know, what feels like a tiny amount of time. All of a sudden we've had to use great agility to help ourselves navigate through these new waters and to help all the people that we support around us navigate too. So you know, I really resonate that we're dealing with issues of fear and anxiety, bewilderment, elements of panic, sometimes anger too, and frustration and sorrow, all these things. But values remain, don't they, our bedrock. And as never before, in our collective time have we needed these? So the purpose of this morning is absolutely to just draw back and draw down on those values for all of us, and to help us realise the exceptional importance of those as we go through. And I just want to put the emphasis, if I may, right on ourselves. All of us here are in roles where we're supporting in all sorts of different ways one another, and all sorts of people who we're not actually physically connecting with at the moment too. But I think for this very reason, I want us to just have a focus on how we are dealing with those values, and to just give us a little bit of a sip from the values cup really this morning. So just to begin with, I'd just like to take you to a place where I'm helping you to realise actually the work that you're doing in schools and in other places, and to invite you to begin to think of yourselves as super values heroes. Now, Neil's going to be talking about super values in just a very short while, and taking our work in values to a new level. So let's start by thinking about ourselves. And I invite you to picture, if you will, a landscape that's in darkness. And just as you picture that darkness, just notice little lights appearing in the frame and starting to burn brighter and brighter. And what I'm inviting you to recognise is that actually you are those lights. You are the light shining in the darkness. And I wonder if, as a values-based leader or practitioner, over the last few weeks, you've been able to really realise that you are those lights. You know, many of us have just been so immersed in this new world and all that it's brought. But actually, you continue to shine, and the values continue to shine through you. And I know that already, even if you haven't seen it yourselves, you will have been a source of light and comfort and hope for so many around you. So this morning, I particularly wanted to offer this opportunity to replenish and revitalise your own values, your values base, and your values sense of yourselves, because you are the values beacons for your communities. And first and foremost, you need the fuel that's going to keep your lights burning. So, so with that, with an exceedingly warm and most heartfelt welcome to all of you, I'm now going to hand over to Jane Hawkes, who's going to lead us in a personal reflection. And if you haven't had the pleasure of having a reflection led by Jane before, or whether you have indeed, I know that you're in for a real treat. So Jane, thank you. Bless you for leading us in this.
Thank you, Bridget. So I'm just going to invite us all to sit comfortably in your seat. Just really feel yourself comfortable, maybe lean back. Often we're leaning forward when we're looking at Zoom, but just take a moment to really feel your body in the chair that you're sitting in. And if you're comfortable, let your eyes gently close, or just let your gaze soften and so just be a soft gaze somewhere. Just start by really feeling your body supported in the chair. Beginning to realize that maybe you're holding quite a lot of tension in your body. See if you can, as you just gently breathe out, begin to let go of any physical tension you might be holding. When you exhale, maybe even have the little phrase, let go, resonating in your mind. Now begin to just be aware of any other sensations that might be around in your body. Gently see if you can just take your breath to any of those sensations and just acknowledge that they're there. And maybe too, your mind is quite active at the moment. There's so much going on externally that triggers our mind. And see if you can gently and kindly take your breath to your mind, just acknowledging whatever's going on there, not judging it, just accepting the activity that's maybe going on. Now begin to see if you can focus your attention on your breathing. Slightly extending your inhalation through your nose and exhaling equally with a slightly longer exhalation, just slightly deepening. Maybe noticing the rise and fall of your abdomen as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Your breath, which really fuels your life. Maybe you can begin to notice the subtle pause at the end of your exhalation before your body naturally begins to inhale again. And the equally subtle pause at the end of your inhalation before you need to exhale again. And I invite you to really notice, maybe in those little moments of pausing, you really sense your essence, your truth, your shining light. And I'm going to invite you to remember that even when you can't seem to find your shining light, it's absolutely always there. So in these times, maybe remember that just stopping for 2 minutes, connecting to your breath, really gives you that opportunity to connect with you. And now, Allow your awareness to refocus on your physical body sitting in the chair. Maybe there are some sounds around you as well as my voice that you can just begin to connect to. And very gently, when you're ready, just let yourself be back here in this amazing values meet.
Thank you very much, Jane.
Can I just, do you mind if I just interrupt and just give you a little bit of feedback so far? Thank you, Jane. That was just, I'm feeling really transformed, so that's wonderful. I just wanted to say that a number of people have been commenting saying it's wonderful to be here together. Amanda has shared that she tells her children to be happy and healthy, and that she's always available when the children need extra help. She identifies that stress is overwhelming some people at the moment. There's been this sort of primary issue. And Julie is commenting, saying that parents will appreciate your reassuring message. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you. Back to you, Neil.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Bridget. I feel deeply moved having this opportunity to speak to you. I was just reflecting how it was 20 years ago, Bridget, that at West Kidlington School I became the head teacher there, having been the chief advisor of the Isle of Wight service. And I joined West Kidlington to see if we could do things differently. Could we affect the quality of education by giving more attention to the internal world of children? And that, what was an experiment really, just profoundly changed my life. But I want to acknowledge, and seeing all your faces today really makes me want to say this, that anything I have contributed pales into insignificance compared with the incredible energy that you all around the world are giving to this concept, this movement of values-based education. It is profound. Just looking at you from Australia, the Philippines, Canada, United States, the UK, all of you are working in a slightly different way. I was giving a talk, I think it was in India a few years ago, and a lady came up to me who apparently was a renowned and revered guru, and she waved her finger at me and she said, "You think too much." And I really took that to heart. I've always been someone that likes to try and think things through, but I realized in that moment that you don't really help others just by thinking. You help others by touching their hearts and forming relationships and using your intuition to guide you. Looking back on my life, I think some of the major mistakes I have made have been because I haven't listened to my intuition. I've gone along with my ego, and I've got some active parts of my ego that encourage me to do all sorts of things that I have regretted. But when I've listened to the true me, the authentic me, then somehow something seems to happen, and it seems to help other people too. Deeply listening to people rather than thinking about what you're going to say next is so simple in one way, but it's profound. You, like me, if you're really listened to, then that has such an enormous effect. Children really appreciate being listened to. As I've had the privilege to watch fantastic teachers over the years, really great teachers, I've come out of their classrooms and thought, what is it that they do that's so special? The first thing, in my view, they do is they are able to make connection. They connect with children. They really do connect to the being of the child, not necessarily the behavior of the child. And in that connection, they then deeply listen. So I've often said to teachers, if you really want to help the education of your children, just really tune in, be attuned to the children. You'll all be familiar, or I'm assuming you will, with the wonderful work of Dan Siegel in the States and his emphasis on being attuned as a parent, as a grandparent, to be attuned to children, to really have empathy and compassion and understanding is an incredible gift. One of the gifts of this really tragic time that we're going through, which has torn so many people apart, and we've lost dear ones, and it's frightening. But one of the positive things is that people are rediscovering the importance of being a human being rather than being a human doing. I've done a lot, but when I reflect how I have been, it's a different question. One of the aspects of the last few weeks that I must say that I've been profoundly moved by is a Thursday evening now when I connect with my grandchildren, those who are under 11, and I read what's known as Grandpa's Story. And I tell a story that involves all the children in it. I've made up this story, and each of them has an adventure, and their little eyes just glow every time I mention them. And as I finish those sessions, I think, why haven't I done this before? I've been really busy going out and inspiring people to work with values, but have I really paid enough attention to my own grandchildren? So these sort of lessons, I think, we are learning through this time. Sue Webb, who's here today, tweeted earlier this morning about not going back to normal. This is a theme that's going round. What is normal? And I deeply hope we won't. My vision, if we go back to West Kidlington, what the wonderful staff there who were guiding me really, they were saying to me, let's give the children space. So we introduced the children to reflective practices, which Jane was showing in her work this morning. That since has become known as mindfulness. It wasn't called mindfulness 20 years ago. But we thought, what would happen if we gave children that time to be pausing and to be inwardly reflecting? Would it have an effect on their thinking and their behavior? What also if we gave them access to an ethical vocabulary, which are made up of the values words such as respect, tolerance, trust? What would happen if we gave them that? So we watched and we noted, and I was doing research at the time, and we saw the effects. And I must admit to you that I never thought the effects would be as much as they were. And we noticed that children would suddenly be what we now call self-led. They would be able to pause and think and be the masters or mistresses of themselves, of their real authentic self, not those parts of their personality which the ego drives. So it was profound what was happening, and their ability to go inward and reflect was something that I will always remember, and many of you have developed that practice. So what the values vocabulary gave was this ethical vocabulary. The ethical vocabulary isn't something new. Aristotle started it many years ago, or people before him. But it is that bringing consciously into schools a vocabulary which the children can think about. Now, what I've been considering in recent months is what was happening as a consequence of that. Because the children were thinking about the values, they were really constructing what we can call super values or dispositions or aspects of character, character traits. They were building these as in terms such as altruism. Altruism, I'm going to look what I wrote about altruism, because I had a meaning which for me, yes, it's unselfish joy in focusing on the actions and well-beings of others. So your focus is always on others if you are altruistic. Jane and I were in Iceland a few years ago, and we were attending a Spirit of Humanity conference. Leaders from all sorts of organizations, religious organizations, non-religious organizations were meeting to look at the spirit of humanity. And Jane and I were having lunch, and suddenly I felt the presence next to me of a man, and he was dressed in robes, and he was obviously a Buddhist. And I didn't know him, and I thought, who's this coming up to talk to me? And I was holding court at a table, talking far too much as usual. And suddenly, this gentle presence said to me, Neil, I just want to say how much the work that you have been promoting through values-based education is profoundly helping humanity. And I looked at him and I said, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I don't know you. Who are you? And he said, my name is Matthew Ricard. And then I thought, Matthew Ricard. Now, I don't know if that name means anything to you, any of you, but Matthew was the first person to write the real work about happiness. If you haven't read his book, Happiness, it is just incredible. His current book, which I think is wonderful, is called Altruism. And on page 534, because it's a really big book, Matthew talks about values-based education and the importance of values-based education. I believe that values-based education has now come of age. It's interesting that conditions have to be right in society for minds and hearts to be open. And I think the opportunity is right now. We need, and I'm promoting, a transformation so that people can think of developing super values, altruism, harmoniousness, communicative competence, relational trust, all these composite values. I believe we need to demand in our leaders and in ourselves that the world needs to be led now by people who have a deep understanding, appreciation of our values, so that relationships are paramount, that our leaders are led by their authentic selves, not from parts of their personality that want to make money or seek power or control. We need a new type of ethic that will help some humanity to go forward. We can miss this moment in time. If suddenly things do go back to normal, we will continue. I was saying to Jane this morning, we were in our own reflection and we were in our garden. And behind me, up on a wire, was a little bird. And the bird was a swallow. 13 years ago, in April, around our house, there used to be hundreds of swallows. At the moment, there is just one swallow, and he or she seems to be calling for his mates or her mates. I'm just hoping that they're going to arrive before long. But unless we look after nature, Sir David Attenborough and all the things he's been saying have come true. We in values-based education give our children access to a vocabulary that will help, when they are adults, them to see life through the lens of positive human values, which all the great religions believe, and those of no religion agree to. So if we can all unite, not look for differences, but look for the commonality. The commonality is in our values vocabulary. Let us stand back and look at each other with a lot of love, a lot of care. Let's use this pandemic and the tragedy of it to really help each other. For the first time, people in our own village, and I'm sure you're finding the same, are now talking. My father said that it used to happen during the Second World War too, but that time was let go. So finally, I'd like to say that each one of you is a values hero. Let's work together in this movement of transformation. As I say, let us not go back to how it was. In every school, the ethical vocabulary should have equal weight with other aspects of the curriculum. We can produce educated Eichmanns, educated people who are not filled with the sort of values you and I share. Or we can have people who will be helping this world to develop, and the sustainability of our planet will be ensured. That is why, my dear friends, values-based education is not an add-on. It's at the center of the debate in government, in the country, in our own community, and in ourselves. So I commend to you this vision for taking our work and each one of us just being the change that we want to see in the world. Thank you all very much.
Neil, thank you so much. Invigorating, inspiring, just wonderful. I'm frustrated we have had to limit this meet because I know there's an awful lot more coming. I just want to share a couple of messages from people, some of which are just absolutely sort of wonderful. Leo from Brazil was talking about the Jane's meditation and said it was the embrace my soul and body needed. So I just thought that was quite lovely. Marie, and echoes a number of people saying she's delighted to be on this call. Amanda, when Neil, you were talking about children's behavior, and I think it was challenging behavior in particular, says that the behavior is their way of asking for help when they haven't learned how to ask in a way they haven't learned how to ask. And I might just chip in that values-based education helps children learn how to ask. That's the beauty, that with the gift that we give to the children, how to express their deepest concerns, anxieties, and their hopes. So everyone here within the values-based world, this is the gift that you give to these hopefully millions of children, and it's growing and growing. Sue from Australia commented that mindfulness is embedded in all our classrooms and it has a profound effect on our students. Corrie says that she's seen an enormous altruism in her staff's team, and she just related a very beautiful story of sending out 290 breakfast packs to children. And for people that don't know her school, it's in quite a deprived area, and there's a lot more to that than meets the eye. And she ends up by talking about her staff being everyday heroes. Again, just a lovely term. Neil, just the points you've made, that talking about super values being composite values, leaders being led by their authentic self. We need a new type of ethics for humanity to go forward, and looking for the commonality with love. These are all the resonating messages of values-based education, which is so important. And everyone on this call and everyone listening to this and everyone in the values-based world, this is what you're touching and you're talking to, this wonder that we're providing. And I just want to round off the comments with a comment from Martin, who had this very lovely reflection, where he says that good things come out of bad things. The ground is most fertile after a fire. So if ever that was a rallying call for what we're doing, we're ploughing the land in these terrible times with a fertile soil for a wonderful values-based education. Neil, if I could just ask you just to talk for 2 minutes a little bit more about the super values, just in the context of this super values award that Bridget was promoting. And if Bridget, if you wanted to come in and just say a word or two about it. I'm going to put in the chat the link to it, and then if I may, I'll just sort of round up this conversation. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Neil, and feel free to bring Bridget in if she wants to come in, and then I'll bring back, but just a couple of minutes if I may. That's at the full extent.
Thank you, Nigel. Sue Webb is going to put on our website, and it'll be on several other outlets of social media, a paper that I've written over the last few days that sums up what I was talking about and adds many more points that I didn't bring into that particular talk. Nigel, what the individual values that we work on, such as trust, hope, care, all those values really develop the highest forms of personal and social behavior, which are competences of character, competences. So you can see that when you have developed one of these values, you develop a competence. But when you group, because I think it was at Julie Rees's school in Ledbury, I was listening to a session when the children had all the values laid out, and they were asked, put the values in an order of importance, and the children set them out. And one girl had put love in the center of a circle of values. And I said to her, why have you put love in the center? And she said, well, without love, you can't have any of the other values. And I thought that was an incredible insight from a 10-year-old. But what she was expressing was that she was developing these competencies, which are traits which can be expressed in words such as, I said, altruism, and there are others, relational trustworthiness. Relational trust was one of the outcomes of Terence Lovett's research in Australia, when the Australians, with Sue Carl being one of the big leaders, and Sue's looking at me now, what they found in the research in Australia when values education was introduced, that relational trust was improved in schools. Academic diligence was another of the improvements that the research showed. And all these things are values that sort of come together as competencies. You're able to be more in control of yourselves. You're more authentic. You're more self-led. You're more educated in the total sense of the word. You're more culturally sensitive, religiously sensitive. You're more courteous, less egoless. So all these are competencies of character that are character traits that I believe we need to see now in our leaders. And that's why I use the word demand from our leaders. So instead of calling them competencies of character or any other phrase, I'm always trying to think, what will children take to? So the notion of super values, rather than competencies or any other term, seems to be a handle that children will understand. So Bridget and everyone has thought of an award that we could give to people for showing these super values. Bridget, would you like to take up the story?
Yes, thank you. And just that, an award for our times, and an award that chimes in with all those things that Neil has just been describing. Corey has already given us the most fitting example of altruism this morning, and you know, that's just one example of what will be so many wonderful things happening out there. You know, it's right, isn't it, to acknowledge that these are supremely challenging times, but equally in these supremely challenging times are some extraordinary examples of the human facility for goodness and the human capability of love. So encapsulating those wonderful actions that you know are happening in your communities is something that we'd really like to both acknowledge and celebrate. So we had the concept of an award which will revolve around altruistic acts, really, a Super Values Award. And we invite you wholeheartedly to nominate people that you have noticed, it's been brought to your attention, who are doing these wonderful things, because we'd like to acknowledge them and you know, to help generate the momentum for this kind of behaviour in our society. And truly, this is helping humanity to go forward, and that's our work. So Nigel will put on, has already, I've seen, put on details of how to go about doing that, and we warmly invite you to, you know, flood us out with nominations for people. So thank you so much. It's been an honour to hear all of your contributions, to see you, to feel that we've been with you this morning, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being so much part of our movement.
And we will be having more of these meets over the next few months. And I'm looking forward to hearing the voices of some of you giving your wisdom, your practical advice, your experience of how we can really fuel our movement so that it can actually, values-based education should be a standard part of every school and not an add-on. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Jane. And thank you, Sue, for all the organisation. Just going to bring this meet to an end. I just want to share a couple of final thoughts that are being expressed. Sue says, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Natalie says, so inspired by these ideas. Jean says, makes an interesting point that I think we see some of these super values in some female leaders in particular. I'm thinking of Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand, and of course there's a lot of support for what she's doing. A wonderful hour surrounded by some amazing people, and I just truly inspiring, says Marie. I just wanted to finish off with a comment from Nina, who says that she's proud to promote and lead a VbE school. And that to me sort of resonates totally with what the whole movement of values-based education is about. It's making huge social transformational change, not in a grand way, in a very down-to-earth, humble way of leading school and developing a new generation with this new way of thinking. So if I can bring this first meeting to a close, thank you so much to Neil, Jane and Bridget for speaking. Thank you all for joining. And we'll be sending details of where you can see this, and future meetings will come in due course.